Hello Eternum and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news, and this is the War Report. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as the forces of Iterum successfully fended off the forces of Vendetta. Two officially sanctioned LARPco simulated fantasy combat events on tap tonight, and up first are the forces of Lost Homeland, seeking to make a new home for themselves in Ebonscale against the forces of Elysian Reclamation. Recent efforts by the Ebonscale Tourism Council have attracted the forces of Lost Homeland to consider settling here. Meanwhile, this reporter has it on good authority that members of Elysian leadership have discovered an ark which was once misplaced and are allowing open tryouts indefinitely. Before moving on to the late matchup, a look at the weather impacting the citizens of Eternum. 30% chance of invasions tonight, mainly in the south, with a small outburst in the east, so update your travel itinerary appropriately. In the late game, it's the forces of Poaching Regime attempting to take advantage of the forces of Gooby Gang. Regime intel forces have also heard word of open tryouts against Elysian-controlled territories and are moving to strike. Gooby Gang stands ready to represent the next generation of Iron Chefs to defend the coastal fishing village. But will Regime forces be too much even for them? Be sure to tune in for complete coverage and reactions from the citizens at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello Eternum and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news, and this is the War Report. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as all assault efforts are rebuked by the defenders. Turning to the weather, mostly sunny today with clear skies, but 20% chance of invasion tonight off coast, so plan your evening accordingly. Two officially sponsored simulated fantasy combat events on tap tonight in central Eternum, so be mindful of invisible walls around the keeps. The forces of B4B become the first to challenge the newest champions of Everfall, the Covenant forces of Reverfall. This will be Reverfall's first Neverfall attempt to defend Everfall from nefarious rebel rousers since wrestling it away from Elysian 2 weeks ago. B4B's strategy is unknown, tonight being only their second official appearance since failing in Morningdale 2 weeks ago. But if they've learned anything, it could be anyone's game. Then, after a brief intermission, the forces of B4B have their eye on the financial capital of Windsward, currently occupied by the Zealots of Regime. Regime forces have been using the funds acquired through low taxation to empower their ambitions and overcome the death wall. If B4B has created a successful strategy or improves upon their earlier efforts in the night, this final matchup could be their perfect time to peak. We'll have the outcomes and reactions from the citizens tonight at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello Eternum and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news, and this is the War Report. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as Regime holds Windsward and the champs of Everfall, Reverfall, begin their Neverfall at 1. Turning to the weather, clear and sunny all day today, turning into mostly sunny with chance of invasions cutting through central Eternum and veering out to the northwest. No official LARPco-sponsored events tonight, but with invasions potentially impacting the central region tonight, opportunistic PvPers may make some moves. KOTT News would like to remind its viewers that only the first 1,000 subscriptions are free, so act now to subscribe to Eternum's #1 source for news, absolutely free. Tune in at 11 for an exclusive interview with corruption expert Adriana Theron. Until then, this has been investigative reporter JChalant, KOTT News. Hello Eternum and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news, and this is the War Report. There were no official wars last night in Eternum as companies sheltered in place and worked on local projects. KOTT news crews took advantage of the opportunity to continue their investigations of the island and stumbled across Angry Earth expert Adriana Theron in Eden Grove. Excuse me, Adriana, JChalant, KOTT News, investigative reporter, do you have a moment to answer a few questions?
You again.
Is KOTT responsible for the death wall surrounding the island?
That seems to be a fairly extreme leap of logic.
What do you hypothesize is the leading concern of the island?
There are many cataclysms unfolding at once.
And what is the Motherwell?
It is the true heart of the angry Earth. It powers the storm wall around the island, preventing corruption's escape.
Say, I have an idea. What if we...
The Motherwell? You can't be serious!
Okay, but let me ask you this.
There's no more time for questions.
Looking at the forecast, clear skies throughout the morning, becoming mostly sunny with light showers in the afternoon. And that's going to grow to about a 40% chance of invasions projected for early evening, wrapping up with a microburst in central windward late. 2 officially sponsored LARPCO simulated fantasy combat resolutions on tap for tonight. Remember, if it isn't LARPCO, it's cardboard. Up first, the Marauders of 1st Dragoon Division make their intentions clear, declaring war upon Cult of Huntsmen in Monarch's Bluff. This will be the second attempt to secure land by 1st Dragoon Division, having fallen short against Regime 3 weeks ago in Restless Shore. For Cult of Huntsmen, this will be their first official defense, having secured it last week from the forces of Elysian Reclamation, and immediately beginning spring repairs on the infrastructure. After that, newcomer Sickos Inc. put their heart into capturing the reserve oil fields of Cutlass Keys from the Marauders of Civil Riot. In the last month and a half they've occupied Cutlass Keys, Civil Riot has won out over 8 previous assault attempts. So if Sickos Inc. intends to overcome the crocodiles in Cutlass Keys, go toe-to-toe with corruption in the mosh pit, and overcome the Marauders of Civil Riot, they better bring their LARPCO. Be sure to tune in for complete coverage and reactions from the citizens tonight at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello, Eternum, and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news. And this is the War Report. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as Cult of Huntsmen defend Monarch's Bluff and Civil Riot wins out in the mosh pit of Cutlass Keys. Tonight's top story: KOTT news crews investigate the possibility of a shipyard to the west in Ebonscale. More on that story tonight at 11. Turning to the weather, early morning is clear with no invasions throughout the afternoon and into early evening, where late evening outbreaks will start to appear. Starting in Monarch's Bluff and Weaver's Fen, up north this low pressure front is going to build and roll through Reekwater as the tropical currents will impact Cutlass Keys to the south. Later in the evening, a small burst into Morningdale from Eden Grove, so be sure to dress appropriately out there. One official simulated fantasy combat resolution for tonight, and it's the forces of Iterum looking to secure the Syndicate territory Ebonscale, currently defended by Elysian Reclamation. Recent efforts by the Ebonscale Tourism Council may have attracted the forces of Iterum to consider settling here. For Elysian Reclamation, maintaining the medicinal healing hot springs and restaurants throughout the harshest winter in Eternum's history has been difficult, and they have no intention of letting all that hard work go to waste. We'll have the outcomes and reactions from the citizens tonight at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello, Eternum, and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news. And this is the War Report. Good morning, Eternum. JChalant reporting. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as the forces of Elysian Reclamation defend the healing hot springs of Ebonscale. Tonight's top story: KOTT news crews return from the docks of Dynasty in West Ebonscale. Investigations revealed not so intelligent corruption forces that foolishly wanted some of this. Turning to the weather: clear and beautiful throughout the morning into early afternoon, with light showers starting early evening in Monarch's Bluff, where this tropical wind stream will push it into Cutlass Keys before dissipating out to sea. Then later in Brightwood, 10% chance of invasion being pushed down by the cold air in the north. Clear skies in the east for tonight's officially sponsored simulated fantasy combat resolution on the books for tonight, brought to you by LARPCO. Remember, if it isn't LARPCO, it's cardboard. Tonight, in the always maligned archipelago of Restless Shore, the Marauders of Evora assail the Zealots of Iterum Autem. Evora has been slowly cultivating its numbers in First Light as Sitting Great House and current Spice Lords, easily recruiting refugees swimming ashore. But Iteramotem is no stranger to refugees, having been accepting of all comers in their efforts to rebuild their mighty ship, capable of being disassembled and carried individually in order to be reassembled later beyond the Death Wall. These two forces have never met officially in battle. Evora has never been assaulted by Iterum, but multiple Covenant campaigns have been rebuked in First Light. Additionally, it should be noted that Marauder forces do have an initial claim to both First Light and Restless Shore, whose initial owners were Party and Seven Kings. Be sure to tune in for complete coverage and reactions from the citizens at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello, Eternum, and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news. And this is the War Report. Dynamic change in the history of Eternum last night as the Marauders of Evora lay claim to the archipelago of Restless Shore. According to sources, the territory exchange was peacefully negotiated and a LARPCO charity event was held ceremoniously. Turning to JC with the weather, clear morning all day into early afternoon again, then a light shower will start in Ebonscale and be blown into Everfall. At this point, a small outbreak may develop in Restless Shore while this centralized mass continues to build in size before, eventually, meiotically dividing and spreading south into Windsward and simultaneously north into Brightwood. Tonight's officially simulated fantasy combat resolution are brought to you by LARPCO. With LARPCO's patent-pending foam core technology, you'll be rugged and safe. Remember, if it isn't LARPCO, it's cardboard. Up first in Reekwater, a Shokugeki for the ages as Vendetta tries yet again to conquer the kitchens of Eternal. For nearly a month now, the second generation of Iron Chefs have been proving themselves in battle after battle, and now stand ready to make their own name. For Vendetta, their fourth attempt to secure Reekwater, their fourth secret ingredient, and this time, it's medium trout. In the second matchup, the syndicate forces of Carl Sagan's Pagans assault the Spice Lords of Evora in First Light. Evora has barely had time to celebrate their reacquisition of Restless Shore for Team Green, and already they are under attack. Unsurprisingly, this syndicate company has kept itself off the radar until ready to strike, presumably exploiting Evora's exhaustion from last night's affairs. We'll have the outcomes and reactions from the citizens tonight at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello, Eternum, and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news. And this is the War Report. No change in the dynamic of Eternum last night as the Iron Chefs of Eternal win out in Reekwater, and the forces of Evora turn away the Pagans of Carl Sagan. KOTT News crews caught up with Eternal representative after the Shokugeki to discuss recent community changes. Current leader of Eternal, Wallen, or should I say current elected representative, could you tell us a little bit about what is the history of Eternal and why you are now defending both Reekwater and Ebonscale?
Yeah, great question. And again, I think to address that first point, right, I'm purely the elected individual here. There are a multitude of good folks helping drive the charge here at Eternals. We are now identifying ourselves as a new group, a group for positive good, for Purple in general, a group that wants to provide content for all. Our opponents on Green and Yellow is good examples. But we are a brand new family of two great houses that have come together to build something new.
Understood. And speaking of building, I understand you're very much into real estate in Ebonscale, so it's my understanding that you are going to be trying to improve the opportunity for members of the community to own property there. Is that correct?
Yeah, you're on the money, John. And I think it's really interesting on this server. There's a lot of areas that I don't think have the greatest real estate property value, right? I think Ebonscale comes with the unique aesthetic. Our objective, I think, for Ebonscale and any territory that we happen to oversee or maybe falls into our lap in the future is to ensure that everyone can find a home there. So today, that's the beautiful swamplands of Reekwater and obviously the beautiful bamboo forests of Ebonscale.
Turning to the weather, another beautiful morning, clear all day into early afternoon, where, like corruption outbreaks, starting in Ebonscale and Weaver's Fen, will drift south into both Everfall and Reekwater. This will continue into Windsward before dissipating, with a late evening cold front from the north causing a small outbreak in Morningdale later. No wars to report on tonight, so KOTT News would like to peacefully remind you that subscriptions are still currently free and make a great gift for friends. Until tonight at 11, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News. Hello, Eternum, and welcome to KOTT News, Eternum's #1 source for news, and this is the War Report. Quiet night in Eternum last night as company leaders sheltered in place planning their next moves. KOTT news crews were out and about when this week's Citizen of the Week emerged. Oh my goodness, my man, I was totally AFK and you saved the day. 0 kills. Thank you so very much for what you've done for me. Without question. This week's Citizen of the Week. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Turning to the weather, another fabulous morning and clear skies throughout the afternoon into early evening, where tropical storms from the west and Arctic blasts from the north will bring light invasions, possibly extending into Reekwater late. Only one officially sponsored fantasy simulated combat resolution event tonight, and it's brought to you by LARPCO. Only LARPCO's patent-pending foam core technology maximizes both comfort and durability without sacrificing safety. Remember, if it isn't LARPCO, it's cardboard. Tonight, the forces of Carl Sagan's pagans attempt to succeed where only Kokiotos has, deep in the bear-filled forests of Brightwood. If you thought sending level 48 members of the Syndicate to their deaths in First Light was a big brain play to prepare for tonight's fight in Brightwood, then maybe you think the pagans of Carl Sagan will find a way to capture what has only been taken once before as they fight to take back the Dark Forests for Team Purple. Brightwood has only ever been controlled by Primordius and Kokiotos, so if the pagans of Carl Sagan manage a victory tonight, it will be the upset of all time, as recorded here on KOTT News. KOTT News crews have signed up for a press pass tonight and are in fact one of the first 28 volunteers, so be sure to tune in for complete coverage and reactions from the citizens at 11. Until then, this has been War Correspondent JChalant, KOTT News.